That's it. So we are live. We are live. We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
What's happening, people? People, what's happening, people? People.
All
Good
right.
afternoon, people. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Testing one, two, three. Guys, as you are logging in this afternoon, let's go ahead and let's hit that share button. Let's go ahead and hit that share button. Let's go ahead and get you in the comments. Let us know where you are logging in from. Let us know where you are logging in from. Man, we have a very great conversation that's going on today. And good to have my Midwest brothers on.
Yes, sir.
Been a minute. A lot has changed, and we'll share a little bit about that. But a lot has changed and some good things. Hey, Mimi, thanks for logging in today. Let's go ahead. I see you. I see you guys coming on in. Um, we're going to give it a few moments because I know it's been a minute since I've gone live during the day. Um, thank you, everyone who has watched the shows over the past year, who have inboxed me, who have emailed me, who have shared your thoughts about the conversations. And we are back today with another one. This one, guys, this one is gonna be a little provocative. This is gonna be good today. We got authors, we got songwriters today. We got some really good conversation. Some really good conversation. So while JD fixes hat,
Listen,
uh,
it's this polo situation. My hat, y'all see, I'm rocking the polo. Hold on, the polo all day, but I'm going old school. I got my JD chain. I'm the original JD, the original. You want to see
the
this ice?
original.
See this ice? This real ice dripping too, cuz
That's real ice.
it's
That's real
cold in
ice
here.
dripping.
Listen, I had to cut the AC off. It's cold around here, brother. It's ice
Listen,
dripping.
hey, if you're gonna wear it, man, if you're gonna wear it, ice it up.
Listen,
You're gonna wear it, ice it up.
this
But
my
listen,
era. This my
listen,
era.
everybody,
My era.
we are excited to be with my good brothers today, and many of you may know Jonathan Dunn, or may know of Jonathan Dunn, or may have heard his name before, not just through going live with me, but even some of his music. So I'm gonna let the good brothers come on and introduce themselves and say what's up to everybody, and then we're gonna get this conversation started. Once they introduce themselves, I'm gonna ask you to share. I'm gonna ask you to let people know that we are live and come and have lunch with us while you're eating your lunch. Instead
Come
of
on in.
watching the news, instead of watching your talk show, watch this talk show. All right, watch this talk show because we got something for you today. All right, so we're gonna start with JD and then we'll close with Gary.
All right, it's real simple. I'm JD, Jonathan Dunn. What's up, Tara? Tara Dunn's on here. What's happening,
Tara,
babe?
Tara,
Um,
what's up, sis?
um, I'm Jonathan Dunn. I am uh, the artist, the singer, the um, evangelist, and pastor. I'll be now celebrating 10 years of pastoring in November. It's been going. And for those that don't know any of the music stuff that I've done, I've written for a few artists that you may know: Marvin Sapp, Tamala Mann, Byron Cage, a few others. We've done some recordings, and we've gotten some number ones, and we've gotten some title cuts, and we've gotten some Grammys and some Stellas and some all that stuff. So God is good. So we're here tonight, and I'm here to introduce my brother for those that don't know who he is. This is Gary Brent Swanson. This is my brother. He's been rocking with me for a while. Actually, all three of us used to do some shows together on the East Coast, the Tune the Worship Tour. And Gary was one of the administrators, and he played every role except sing. At least behind the microphone. He was singing in my ear, like, dude, let me sing tenor tonight. I'm like, no, stay, handle the business. But and Gary Brent Swanson, he can tell you more about himself, but he is a very phenomenal man of God, retired military, trainer, philanthropist, The list goes on and on. He's doing it all. So go ahead, Gary. Talk to him.
All right, yeah. Thanks for having me, gentlemen. Jay Moody, my man.
Yes, sir.
Jonathan Dunn. I am not a celebrity like these guys. These guys is top notch. But yeah, these are my guys. I've been rocking with them since the early 2000s. So we just kind of we you're gonna see how we kick it here in a minute. But as JD said, Gary Brent Swanson, retired Air Force, now a corporate leadership trainer. That I 9 to 5, but outside of that, author of 2 books, 1857 and The Relationship Perfect Square, which is the one we're probably going to tap into a little bit today. Also, I don't consider myself a relationship expert, but more of a relationship coach, and just utilizing my experiences not only with just relationships in general, but some of the opportunities that I've had over the years to speak with counsel couples throughout my military career and thereafter. Um, Also a life coach where I help people with other stuff as far as how to reach their goals and some other things and aspects of their personal and professional life. So like JD said, kind of dibbling and dabbling in a few things, but always like to come back and have the conversation with the fellas and really bring it to the people and just try to help people with some things that we know that they're dealing with in the real world. And I think that's important to do. So let's get it. Let's get it in, fellas.
Let's get it. Let's go, guys. So I know many of you may be watching, you may be on lunch, you may still be working, like you're working through your lunch, but you have this conversation on. So we really appreciate you. Again, go ahead and share this conversation today. Very provocative conversation, and it's something that I believe is inexhaustible for the life of us. We are always going to be talking about relationships, the dynamics of relationships, the ups and downs, in and out. And what's crazy is we know that there is nothing new under the sun, but yet there are parts of this subject matter that intrigues us. There are parts of this subject matter that has the ability to help grow us and develop us, because it's really about the season that you're in. It's really about where you are in your life and your relationship, right? Like many people who are past the getting to know one another stage, trying to fuse lives together, are now in the point where they have conversations now. They don't have arguments anymore. When they first started, they had arguments because it was like, two people with two sets of ideologies, two sets of philosophies, two different backgrounds tried to fuse their lives together. And, it was pretty explosive. Now, those who survived that stage, they come together and they talk about it. But this one, guys, it's a bit provocative today. It's a bit provocative today. We're talking deception, desires, and decisions. And I just got to ask, because, guys, if you've watched my conversations with Dunn in the past, it's literally what you doing, let's go live. And no real research, no study. It's like, I don't even know, bro. I don't even know if you on point right now, but we got to go public, right? So listen, it's always edifying. It's always good. And we're here today, guys, and we're talking deception, desires, and decisions. So, Jay, I'm throwing it at you, man. How did we get to this point? I know you mentioned scripture. You mentioned 2 Samuel. You mentioned David, Bathsheba. And, you kind of hit us with what could probably be a sermon series, a very juicy one. Deception, desires, and decisions. Let's talk about it, man.
Well, I think what hit me was I had talked with Gary a couple of weeks ago about he's gonna be in town, so come over, do our Wednesday night, and we're talking about relationships, and it just really kind of stuck with me on how sometimes we skip around the real issues that are either the make or breaks of relationships, and faithfulness, also juxtaposed infidelity. And then you got the whole desire, but then you got deception. So I'm like, let's talk about this. So we had such a good time last night talking about it. I hit you as soon as we was on Bible study, like, yo, let's talk about this again to a broader audience. conference and not
Yeah.
just church.
Yeah.
So I think the concept of it, as I said last night, the conversation stems out of the story of
Yeah.
David and Bathsheba. And for
Yep.
those that don't know it, let me give you the narrative and the context. King David in the Bible, one day he woke up and he was on his rooftop. And while he got up in the middle of the night, he looked over on the rooftop across and he sees this beautiful Hittite woman. Hittite, Cushite means she was dark skinned, she was black, she was beautiful, she was fine, and she was bathing. And he seen her and said, yo, she kind of fly. Next thing you know, he sent his servants, inquired about her. He found out who she was, who her daddy was, who her husband was. Next thing you know, he said, I want her. They went and got her. Boom. Brought her there. He slept with her. That's what that
Yeah.
was. She sent word later on, hey, I'm pregnant. He like, yo. So this is the time when the kingdom was at war. Her husband was at war. So David said, send word out there to her husband. Tell him, come on back in. Go ahead and lay with your wife. David thought maybe I'll go ahead and you can get her. And then we'll think the baby's his.
Yeah.
Oh, boy was like totally sold out for the kingdom. He said, nope, I'm not going to go in with my wife while everybody here fighting. So he slept on the doorstep of the palace with David and the rest of the servants. David's like, man, I got to come with another plan. So then from there, David now sends him out on the front line. Boom, gets him killed. He's dead. She's pregnant. David now moves her into the palace, marries her, and they have a son. So the rest of the story, you know, is not so much the meat of it, but that's the story. So the reality is last night we kind of uprooted infidelity and faithfulness has levels. And the story starts with David is up on the rooftop and Bathsheba's on the rooftop. There was no pre-conversation between them two saying, meet me at the rooftop. I'm going to be naked and show you my body. I'm going to look. There was no pre-conversation. She was doing her thing. He was doing his thing. And as a consequence, he ended up seeing her. So infidelity in relationships, it has levels. And sometimes focus and zero in on when they actually had the act. But we don't really do a whole lot of conversation about pre-moments, all the variables, all the things that play into the scenario. So that's what the conversation really is about. And that is, how do we deal with, in a relationship, rooftop moments? Because you're going to see stuff. You're going to be up. You're going to be aware. And Bathsheba, according to the text, she's cleansing herself because she just came off her monthly cycle. She's also doing something that's purification and it's personal. She ain't studying David. She's doing what she would do in a normal setting. She's purifying herself, cleansing herself, coming off of what is called a ceremonially unclean season. And David sees her when she's having a purification and a personal purification moment. And she now is summoned to come to his palace. And there she is in this dramatic saga. So we do know that Bathsheba was in no way in the wrong because of the whole reality of that kingdom. David was the king. It was a male-dominated reality. She was chosen by the king, and she went to the king. And David, as most theologians say, David was 100% wrong. Howsoever, last night and today, we said we're going to be very eisegetical. So I gave you all of that. That's the exegesis. That's the Bible's version of it, which is the truth. But for conversation purposes, we're going to be very eisegetical, pull in and take out and add to scenarios, because all of us are not David and everybody's not Bathsheba. So we have to put it in our context to make it make a whole lot of sense. So that's the crust of the whole reality. So Gary, if you can go ahead and jump in, or if Jay, you want to narrate it and jump in with Gary on the rooftop moments, because Gary, you really led us last night. So go ahead.
All right, yeah. And like Pastor saying, and this was not a hookup. This was not a something where they got together and it's like, hey, we're gonna meet up at the rooftop. This was a situation where it just happened and opportunity presented itself. And I want to make sure that I say that because in relationships and the ideas of infidelity, a lot of the times we think that, and I'm saying that they're not, and a lot of times we think every time somebody falls into rooftop moments, it's pre-planned or it's a hookup. And it's not always the case. Sometimes, opportunities present themselves and we have to be prepared mentally, emotionally for those opportunities and know that those opportunities are real. So one thing that I want to make sure that we talk about today is uh, I don't really kind of get into Jay Moody the right and wrong, right? Because we can argue all day who was right, who was wrong. When we talk about infidelity situations, and I think so many times what happens with that is the argument of right or wrong takes over, and we never talk about how did we get to the rooftop. And
Yeah.
there's a pathway, if you will, to the rooftop. There's
So so it's like Deborah Cox. How did we get
yeah,
here?
yes, sir.
Hey.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I think the conversation has to be, from the time David woke up restless, as one of the panel members last night brought out to light. David was restless. So, and then he went from being restless and ended up at the rooftop, and then his mind is somewhere else, and then immediately he sees something that is intriguing to him in a beautiful woman bathing naked. And there's a couple of things that I think we want to bring out in this is we're going to talk a little bit about power, right, and authority,
Mm,
right. We want to talk a little bit about opportunity and recognizing that sometimes we find ourselves in opportunity, and then also we want to talk about what are some things that maybe uh, David was dealing with mentally and emotionally that got him into a place where he thought it was okay to see not only see Bathsheba but call for her, right?
yeah.
So and so that's kind of how I want to go with this. I want to make sure that we deal with the path to the rooftop. How do we get to the rooftop?
Because I think like when we talk about temptation, what are we talking about? We're talking about desires and we're talking about opportunity.
Yes.
And it's the moment that opportunity and desire meets that we are now at that place of being tempted. And we have to make a decision very quick. And a lot of times, I think the decision probably needs to be made before you get to the rooftop. But nevertheless, many people find themselves at the rooftop where desire is meeting the moment or meeting the opportunity. That's where and I think Gary, you mentioned tracing things back, right? um I mean, you just mentioned power, David being in this seat, but then David's history,
Yeah.
coming up to this moment, David's emptiness of his growing up, or I won't call it an emptiness, but just his experiences that made him have contributed to a certain personality of how he moves, right? And now
Hmm.
he's sitting in this seat of power. So what do we do, Gary? How do we manage having power, having access without abusing that power, and handling it well? Because that's,
Yeah.
Gary, that's hard. Like, especially when as men who we enjoy our egos being brushed or combed, or um whatever the terminology is, our when people feed our
Stroked.
ego, stroke, there we
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
ego
Yeah.
stroke, right? We enjoy that. Like, Yo,
Yeah,
100. We enjoy it,
100.
especially when it's from the ones that we want it from, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so David's in this situation of power, man. What happened? What happens here? What happens to
Yeah, well,
people that are in David's position?
well, absolutely. And I think there's a couple of things we want to bring out here is, you know, David was the king, and his team, his responsibility, right? His position of authority needed to be. He was supposed to be over in the war fighting with his folks, but David decided he didn't want to do that. So now he's out of position for whatever reason. Doesn't really say why, but he's not over there, and his guys is over there. So, and it mentioned in the text that he couldn't sleep, right? So I think sometimes what happens is, as people, not only just men, but as people, we get to a place where we are dealing with some things mentally and emotionally. So we're like, all right, well, David is out of position, but it does not take away his power. So now he's probably struggling with, man, I'm supposed to be over there with the fellas. They over there fighting. I'm here. I can't sleep. I feel bad. I'm not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing. What's everybody else thinking about me, knowing that I'm not over there? Have I have people question my authority and my power and who I am as a man? All this stuff could be potentially going through his mind. I can remember as pastors, as Don said, we're isogeting this. So, none of this is in the text, but we're just conversationally talking about what could happen and what do we realistically go through. So sometimes when we're outside of that and we're not in line with our assignment, as Dunn is talking to FAI about, sometimes we get so disconnected with other things. We look for an out. We look for a feel good. We look for something that's going to make us feel better or justify what we're feeling. And sometimes we're blindsided by that. So
Yeah,
a lot of the times people say, well, he should have made a better decision, or he should have thought through it, or he has an opportunity. Cheating is a decision. Absolutely, it is. But sometimes we give people too much credit in that we expect them to critically think through situations, but sometimes mentally and emotionally they're not in that space, and we just want to feel better. And I think that's the conversation that we had with David is he ended up on the rooftop because of how he was feeling.
mm,
You know what I mean? He ended up on the rooftop because he couldn't sleep, because he didn't feel like he was in his proper place or his proper assignment. So now he's out of place, not only mentally but now physically out of place. Ended up on the rooftop. He sees Bathsheba and he's like, "Whoa, that's what I'm talking about right there. That's gonna probably make me feel better."
And
And
you
then
have
there's
to keep
power
in
in that.
mind, you
Go
have to
ahead, Don.
keep in mind contextually, the Bible says this was the time for war. This was, so
yeah,
you got to get out of your mind that this was a day. This was a
Yes,
season.
yeah,
yeah,
So the time represents a season. It wasn't a day. It wasn't a week. It was however long this time that they were fighting this battle.
hmm
David, on this particular night, seen something that, as Gary said, either David was looking for pleasure or he was looking for comfort. We got to really deal with that.
yes,
Married or single, when it comes time for you to want to experience somebody, you're either feeding comfort or you're feeding pleasure, and or both. But what is the
yes,
yeah,
motivating factor for David to say, "Oh man, I see her, man, I want her"? Did
yeah,
David just want a comfort girl,
yeah,
or was David searching for something that he could not get from his other wives? Because keep
yeah,
keep in mind also, Bathsheba's married to one man, Uriah. David has many wives and concubines. So David has many outlets to get his needs met. She has one.
so
So keep
so
that in mind.
so
yeah,
Jay, in that, and as we're looking at it, you're saying that, Bishop Travell Travis from Virginia asked a very poignant question. He talks about David's mother. And again, this goes back to at the beginning when Gary talks about knowing the history of the individual. Like that's critical. Not having David's mother, David not having his mother per se active in his life. David being what he say, I was conceived in sin, right? So that whole backdrop of the story of Jesse and David's mom having this issue of of Jesse putting away David's mom because of a question of bloodline, but then supposed to be sleeping with his concubine, but ends up sleeping with David's mother and impregnates David's mother, and then calls him to be a shepherd, right? A very dangerous job as a young boy, almost to say, I'm putting you in this place to be killed. I'm not expecting you to make it out, right? Because even when Samuel goes to the house to anoint, he brings everyone except David, right? Like, yeah. So all of this is playing out. And now David's in a position of power.
Yeah.
What does that do to a person? The history, your upbringing, how you were treated, the absence of a father or absence of a mother, and now you're in a position of power.
Very strong points made right there, and these are foundational points that we can even translate to this conversation for our Western culture thinking. And that is, David didn't have a strong parental reality. So David never really was coached to make really mature choices. And David's gift always put him in places of power. The whole Samuel thing that you talked about. Then the next chapter, Goliath. And then now David is being transported back from the sheep to the palace because he can play before the king. So David's getting all of these power opportunities just because he's able to do something. He's gifted. But now he's put in an environment where you got to notice he's been looking at sheep and been kind of back. Now he's in the palace where he's seeing all types of wonderfulness. So now we matriculate to him now being king.
Why wasn't all of the other wives enough?
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. I think that for women that are watching, when a man cheats on you, it does not necessarily mean that you're not enough. When a man is unfaithful to you, it may be something in him that makes no woman enough, because the narrative is Bathsheba ends up being another one of his wives at the end of the story. So the reality is, why was the other wives not enough? It can really speak to the pathology of David. And that is, when you have a hole in your heart, you have a hole in your soul, when there's a void that has never been filled, you've learned how to fill it the best way you can with broken pieces. So David's never had anything whole. So now that he has this, and again, let's go back to it, it's power. David's the king. There is no limitation to what he can have. So when I look at Bathsheba, even though I know she comes from a family where she has a father, Eliam, and she has a husband, Uriah, there's two men in her life that cover her. David still said, but I want her, which really exerts another level of power. Even though she has powerful men in her life, I'm more powerful. And because her father is absent in the text, Uriah is present, but her father is absent in this whole scenario. It proves a whole nother scenario of the male-dominated thing. So I think these are contextual things that we have to keep in this conversation as we narrate it to our realities. But I think that power piece connected to David, as you said, Jay, David never really had anything powerful. And then now he jumps up into this power position. Now, it was not, let's also get this straight. When David was back there dealing with the sheep at age 17, now we're talking about 20-something years have gone by now. So sometimes grown men that are kings are still little boys in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
He's supposed to be mature, and he is mature enough to run a kingdom. he's mature enough to fight a war, but he may not be mature enough to respect somebody else's woman because he feels if I'm hungry, I'm gonna feed. If I'm hungry, I'm gonna feed.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. Jay, Shakila said, David said, who gonna check me? Who gonna check? who
I'll
gonna
tell you
check me?
one thing. If Shakila was in the kingdom, she would have came in, she would have checked things for real.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Gary, jump in.
yeah. So and I think it's so key that we talk about the realness of things. Like Dunn said, sometimes, and what happens in a lot of the times is when we talk about infidelity, and I said this last night when we talk about infidelity, a lot of the
Gary, you breaking up. Can you hear us?
Yo, can't hear
Gary,
you, Gary.
Gary, if you just got a phone call, just log out and log back in. I think a phone call might have came through, and because now we can't hear you. So just log out and log back in, and we'll bring you back in.
And Jay, let me say this while he's logging back in. I think that the purpose of this conversation is to give some, every time I'm preaching, even on Sunday morning, if I approach a text, I'll always ask, who has never heard this story before? It will shock you.
Yeah.
How many people come to your church every week and half the stuff we preach, they heard it exhorted, they've heard it said, but they have no real context.
Yeah.
You in, Gary?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, yeah,
Go
got
ahead,
a phone
Gary.
call come through. But yeah, I think what happens a lot of times when we discuss this idea of infidelity, the conversation a lot of times goes directly to the men. And like I said last night, women cheat too. And what I think what we need to realize is when we talk about this relationship thing, right? And the whole thought about how do we get to the rooftop? What is some things, right? And like Dunn said, on one aspect you got to think, well, yeah, sometimes, and Moody asked the question, why was the other wives enough? And some people are, especially when you're in a position of power, can get greedy and can just get
Yeah.
simply, I want because I can have, right? And not because I need it, not because I don't have it already available to me, but I want it because I can have it.
Mm.
But on the other hand, it is I want it because I'm not getting it, which is
Well,
Well,
another situation that we need to be able to address, because so many times, right, we think of this infidelity thing or this cheating thing is that, oh, somebody went out and cheated on me, woe is me, I'm the victim. And while those situations happen, there's also other situations where you are not providing the needs of the individual in the relationship, but yet you're saying you bet not go get those needs nowhere else.
yeah, I think the scripture says it calls it due benevolence.
yep,
You're
yep,
not you're not giving due benevolence.
yep.
And in
Yeah,
the streets, and the streets would say you're cutting off the supply.
right.
And you know what, Jay? Last night, and it was a big response to that. Of course, it is, because a lot of people in the kingdom, in church, are starving for attention. They're starving for intimacy, and they're starving for sex. What it
Yeah.
is, it's just
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think that scenario is so real, and
Yeah.
that a lot of people, they get married. What's funny to me is a lot of people will, before marriage, screw like rabbits,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then once they get married, it's like, all right, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
why are we not on each other like we used to be?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Which really goes to what was in David to make him not only see a fine woman, but know that she
Yes.
was married and know that she had a father, and still say, I'm talking about he went through, as some people say, he broke 10 of the 7 commandments. And he wasn't that guy that's in the marriage that's married to one person and she's not giving him none. He had wives and concubines. He had major options. God even spoke on that. God said, you could have had, why'd you do this, David? You could have had anybody.
Which really speaks to a deeper issue, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, of what David may have been missing in his life. I thought this question was really, really good, guys. What do you think? Could anyone have stopped David but David? It happened so fast. Could safeguards have prevented it? Now, here's the question. Did David know he had that potential in him until it happened? I think that's
Jack,
good.
that's a good.
That's a
Can you put that question back up, Jay? Can you put that back up again?
Absolutely. That last part.
Yeah, did David know?
Could anyone have stopped David but David? This is really 3 good, powerful narratives here. Could anyone have stopped you but you? Which means now, if you don't learn how to stop you and you're in a powerful position, you will not be stopped.
Right.
So because sometimes the deliverance is not from other people or things. Sometimes the deliverance has to be from yourself.
That's it. That's it. That's a great, Travell Travis, that's a great point, because it happened so fast. Let's deal with that if y'all don't mind. It happened so fast. David did not wake up saying, I want to sleep with somebody else's wife. David woke up and he seen something beautiful. And immediately it hit him in a place in his soulish realm where he said, whoa. And then it happened so fast that David is now acting. He's acting. And then lastly, could safeguards prevented it? The very men that David sent to inquire about her,
they were not there.
That's his safeguard, my assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
You know, but you gotta, but like I said last night too, though, you know, when you want something and you think that there's a potential that you can't have it, you're gonna call on the people that you know is not gonna stop you. So when David called for the people to inquire, he called on the people he knew that wasn't gonna question what he was doing. And see, that's kind of what we talk about, surrounding ourselves with people that's going to hold us accountable. But when we want to do something, and then at that time, I like the last question is like, you know, could he knew he had it in him? That's that critical thinking thing that I think we don't do enough of, and we don't walk through certain scenarios and think about the decision that we make, and then how much of that desire, if you will, is in that decision, and then the consequences of that. But the other aspect of it is, you know, because of his power, David knew that he can get away with it.
So we thought, yeah.
So at that moment, he felt like, oh yeah, I can get away with this because I'm the king and ain't nobody gonna question me. And then we call on people that we know is not going to question us, especially when we got our mindset on something that we want.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's good. That's good, G. We got Joe and Cass on tonight.
Yo.
I think it's Cass that's asking this because she came back and said, is this for men only?
No, okay. If you are not receiving due benevolence in your marriage, respect yourself and your spouse enough to, one, talk it out. Get counseling, leave before you cheat. Ooh, yeah. But then the church is going to make you feel bad for leaving because you have no self-control. You see how religion causes restrictions. So the people that want to leave because they're not getting due benevolence now find other ways to try to please God or please church, and they stay in dysfunctional scenarios when the reality is talking it out, getting counseling, and then the option to go ahead and bounce versus, listen, let me just go to the rooftop, find somebody fine, get me some, and I ain't got to deal with all the other stuff. So that's, and I'm glad you asked that question, Cassie, because I believe that this conversation is provoking. Remember, you all, we're having a very eisegetical conversation. So everything that we're saying, we're imputing. We don't know the temperament of David's men. We don't know if they were a bunch of yes men, but we do know that David was the king. He had all authority. And please keep in mind, you all, in this whole chapter, 2 Samuel 11, this entire chapter, we don't see the word the Lord until the very last verse, verse 27. It says, and the Lord was displeased. After David slept with her, after David got Uriah killed, after they had the baby, the Bible says, and the Lord was displeased. So we know how the Lord felt, but we also see from 1 to 27 verses, David never once consulted the Lord. David never prayed about it. He never said, Lord, he never prayed before he fell, like a lot of us would do, like, Lord, don't let me, according to the text. So I think it's important, going back to Cassie's question, how many people are in a matrix where they have those options to talk about it, go to counseling, or leave? Let's be honest. How many church folk, I'm talking about baptized, water baptized folk, that's in that matrix where it's like, listen, they tell you to stay. It is the will of the Lord. Stay and work it out. So how many of us are in that matrix?
Yeah.
Right. And back to, like Cassie's question is, and I think Juan brought up a similar question last night, in that, I mean, ideally that is the thing to do, right? Talk about it. Why aren't you meeting my needs? Let's talk through this. And if you can't meet my needs, I'm out. That sounds great. But I promise you, only 2 or 3 out of 10 couples do that, right? Because one, the conversation, I believe that is had is probably not honest enough and open enough to be able to explain to each other why each other is not meeting each other's needs, right? Because then now I got to talk about my possible inadequacy, or I got to talk about my possible inability to be able to meet your needs. And now I got to admit to, the lack of desire or attraction that I have for you for whatever reason, because you look
That's
different or
good.
you see differently from 5 years ago when we got together. So
That's
now I
good,
got to
Chief.
talk about my performance issues. All of those conversations are difficult to have. So instead of having those, we kind of like, well, what's the alternative? And then we put ourselves in positions where, because we don't talk about them, or like Dunn said, we get that fear of, it says leave, but there are so many variables to that leave thing, especially when you're married, right? Because now you got to talk about financially, you got to talk about the fear of being lonely, you got to talk about the fear of starting over. All of that stuff keeps people in situations where now, the conversation is difficult to have, because it's hard to be honest now, because there are some things in that conversation that we really don't want to talk about.
And that's why I asked how many people are truly in that matrix where they have those options. Because when you're in a different matrix, like we all grew up in, it's like you don't have those options. First of all, you don't know how to talk about it. Secondly, counseling, we were brought up where, if your pastor wasn't counseling you, it was the assistant pastor or somebody at the church, and they probably just as sexually frustrated as you are. So they're
Right,
giving you
right.
dysfunctional. They telling you, well, you got to go home and you got to starve that flesh. That's the enemy, and they begin to make everything demonic. And it's like, this ain't even demonic. This is just natural. This is my human talk.
Yeah,
And then
Yeah.
when it comes time for, I'm not going to leave over this,
yeah.
but I want this to be fixed.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when you and I don't know who's on here watching has ever felt that situation where you've been in a committed relationship and don't feel desired, and you believe and you feel like there's somebody that's more Bathsheba than you are. So now it really chokes out your desire to even want to give yourself or give due benevolence. So I think all these things are very good variables that we need to really, as the church, continue to dig in and talk about, because what it will do, it will bring out something that the church has to get ready for, and that is deliverance from religious pre-marriage, meaning religion has pushed people into marriages. Let me say it again. People have made decisions to go ahead and get married prematurely because of religion. And then they end up in a place where that Jay Hendrickson.
Yeah, I'm gonna read his statement next. Go ahead, finish your statement. It's kind of big.
I want it because I think Jason about to say something. He about to fall out. That's my dude, Jay. Come on, Jay, bring some fire to this.
He said, we can't control the thoughts that come to us, but this is a great example of what happens when you entertain thoughts that tend to be destructive. We can't move impulsively. It never ends well. We can't stop what comes to our mind, but we can stop what we entertain.
That's good. That's
absolutely. But then the question becomes, I like that, Jay. But the question becomes, how do we discover the way to not act impulsively, especially if we're dealing with some other things that maybe it got us to a place of frustration. And I think when you're in a place of frustration, whatever that means, that means you're out of place, you're out of position, you're not feeling like you're adequate in whatever area of your relationship, whether that be you just lost your job and now you're like, yo, how am I going to get the bills done? Or if it's a sexual frustration or any other frustration, and now you're seeking comfort and you don't feel like you're getting that comfort or that backing or that boost from the person in the relationship that you really wanted or needed from, for whatever reason. And now that impulse thinking is heightened. And, the critical thinking is very, very important. Like Jay has said, how do we walk through that? And we need to talk about, being able to get ourselves in a place of maturity internally to be able to stop those desires or those times of when we are in those situations and we're deciding impulsively.
Yeah, that's good. Let me ask you this. So, Jay talked about the opinion of many of our religious environments, but do we have enough non-judgmental rooms where this conversation helps us to get over that uneasiness of the truth we don't want to hear, right?
Jay, you said what you say. You said what you said. You said rooms. What kind of rooms?
Non-judgmental.
Woo! That right there.
Non-judgmental room, right? Because as we get older, right? Like, so men, as we get older, we go and get like prostate tests, different things like that, right? Natural, right? Jay, you mentioned earlier about natural. Carlton Pearson says that we are sensual. Where's my thumb? We are sensual, we are sexual, we are spiritual, and we are social. We're sensual, we're sexual, we're spiritual, and we're social. These are natural responses, natural. And so when you understand that, then there's a lot of resolve in Gary. You talked about critical thinking, you talked about the quiet spaces of knowing yourself, because a lot of that, I believe, plays into the relationship and having those moments or those tough conversations, right? Because if you're in those non-judgmental rooms, even the toughest of conversations are not as tough.
Right.
Yeah, those struggles is like, because what happens, especially as Black men, we got to go get tested, right? And then, they talk about impotence in Black men. Gary, you talked about not being able to perform sexually, fam, that is a big hit to the ego.
Yeah.
Huge.
Imagine going. Listen, imagine going to the locker room with your boys and like, yo, I couldn't get it up. It becomes this whole forget the church realm right now. Forget the church realm. We just talk about non-judgmental rooms, right? Just you know what I'm saying? You become the joke.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a bruise to the ego.
And
then now you got to go back home to a situation, and then it's like, wait, I don't have a safe space to go outside the house, and then it's hard to tell. You know what I'm saying? The spouse or whoever the person, and I'm just talking about from the male's perspective, right? I'm just talking from the male situation, you know. So a lot of scenarios, happen in those situations, man. What do you do?
I think Jay is good. I think this is good because what we have to now add to this conversation, and Jay or Gary, you may know the answer better than me. We know that David had multiple wives. Right now, offhand, I can talk about Michal, who was Saul's daughter, and we know what that relationship was like. And then we can talk about Abigail, who David ended up getting because her husband Nabal was a fool, and he dropped dead of a heart attack because he was in fear of David. And so David ended up winning these women, but we never really hear about a passion story until we get to Bathsheba. So keep in mind that the end goal for David was he married her. She wasn't no jumper.
Right.
So the inquiry of her was she's married to Uriah, which now becomes the problem before and after, because David sleeps with her, but I don't think it was David's intention to get her pregnant. She comes up pregnant. So David is now not trying to kill him, but he's trying to say, okay, well, let's go ahead and fix this by you getting pregnant. And it seems like it's your husband's. But then, lastly, let's get rid of him. But immediately, it says, from what I'm seeing, it says, and when and when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, was dead, she mourned for her husband. And when the mourning was past, mourning as in not the next day, but the mourning as in when she was done mourning,
grieving,
David sent and fetched her to his house, and she became his wife. So look at the end goal here. So my point I want to insert this into the conversation, and that is maybe this was the first time, maybe this is the first time David was able to see someone and say, this is what I want versus this is what I can have.
Or I'm sorry that I put you in the situation that I put you in. Let me fix it.
Yeah.
Yo, it's so many scenarios. Man. I mean,
but again, Jay, when you talked about, I want to submit that only because a lot of great men, kings, businessmen, pastors, whatever, a lot of great men, and I hope this don't come off wrong, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it.
Yep.
A lot of people marry before they become a king. And then who they're married to is not a queen.
Don't fit the.
So now, what do you do?
I gotta sit up.
What do you do?
I gotta sit up.
But what do you do when you now have to operate in an area in your life where you've now finally got to the place of the prophecy, which is king? But now you've never really had what you desired. You just had what you can get. Michal was given to him. Abigail was given to him. So now Bathsheba is something that we see in the text that he sees.
That he wanted.
And he says, whoa.
Jonathan, chill.
See, that's the thing.
Chill. What happens when you marry? What was it? What happens when you marry not what you want, but what you could get? At that level.
But you are now
at a place
where you've become what Now you in place and you married somebody that don't match where you are now. So now your desires, and one of my homeboys from Central State University, Ian Cox, he said, now we got to deal with the lust of the eye that has been an issue with man tracing back to the garden. So David sees, now come on, y'all, let's look at it. We got some people that we know, and we see them, and we see their spouse, and they have the testimony of no infidelity, and they've been together for years, and you're like, he not once wanted to cheat? Because I believe that once you get what you desire, there's a certain level of fulfillment that you get. And evidently, David woke up and there go Ian right there. The king is the teacher of his queen. I believe God will allow space for that growth and development. That is true. But when you are David in this particular narrative, David is a married man to multiple wives, but he wakes up and sees something and says, all right. Hey, Jana. Y'all see Jana? What's up, Jana? So, Gary and Jay, y'all take that because I think that was a good insert, and that is.
And I think, I mean, Jay, to this point, you can't marry for where you are. And I think I told you this the other week when we were talking about the cars. I got what I got because of like just trying to hurry and get something.
Mm-hmm.
But because my wife and I talked about it, she was like, I couldn't understand why you chose this one. And it was just like, I chose it for that moment, right? I didn't think about, a year down the road, like, bro, I'm sitting in there cramped when all I would have had to do was it's not that I didn't have it, right? I can't even say that was an excuse this time, right? But it was like, a year later, I'm sitting there like, dang, yo, I need an upgrade.
Right.
I need more room. I need more. And it's just like, but I think, again, to that point, man, is, you have to, when you make decisions like this, consider your future. You have to be patient. Listen, don't let the people throw the scripture at you. It is better to marry than to burn. Listen, discipline yourself. We don't talk about this. We don't talk about the disciplining aspect enough. Discipline yourself enough so that you don't burn, and also that you don't marry the wrong one.
Right. Yo, Jay, if you can put Travail Travis's last post up about Bathsheba was the first wife that he picked for himself. Micah was a gift. Abigail was benevolence. Bathsheba was pure attraction. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. That's he said it. He said it, Jay. He said it, Gary, in a nutshell. Right there.
That right
opens
there makes
up a whole nother conversation.
Right, and I think that's the kind of premise of my book, The Relationship Perfect Square, is having those upfront conversations early enough and the timing of when you're thinking about possibly committing to someone, right? And and then making sure that you are able to you got to know yourself enough first to know what it is that you want, desire, and need, and be able to communicate that. And I think a lot of times we commit or we marry for the other reasons, loneliness. I'm just like you said, I'm trying to get what I want. Like Jay Moody talked about the car. That was at that time that seemed like what was the right thing to do, or what it was for me. And then now, a year later, I want an upgrade. Right. But then now I got a depreciation asset.
Woo! Break that thing down, G. Break that thing down.
Now my upgrade becomes more difficult to get because I got depreciation in what I have. So
break that thing down.
So now it's difficult now because we didn't do what we should have done early. When we talk about, let's be honest about the features that I want in it. Let's be honest about the price point. Let's be honest about, and like you said, looking 2 or 3 years down the line. We're talking about having a family, or we're talking about space, or we're trying to go buy a house, and we're going to need something bigger. We don't do enough of that honest conversation early. We get into something, and now we find ourselves stuck in something that we feel like we can't get out of.
Yeah, that's good.
Reverend,
That's good.
I think this is a good time to insert this, and it is. Let me insert this, then I'm insert this. Ladies, if you're watching, don't beat me up for this, but let me just say this. Ladies, if you're watching, when you get married, don't take for granted that just because you all said I do, that you always make him want to do. You have to revisit moments where he'll see you on the rooftop and desire you. You have to revisit moments, which means sometimes you can get so focused on covenant and commitment that you don't realize that man, especially those in power, will break covenant and break commitment and rely on the Lord that forgives. You gotta understand that, because if you don't, you're going to be playing a humanistic, religious, spiritual Russian roulette type game with your own whatever, your own marriage. So I think that's one thing. Secondly, we have to consider from the text, based on when David said, this is another point, when David said to Uriah, come on home and go sleep with your wife. You are relieved from military duty. You're relieved from service. Uriah was like, no, I can't do that. I am not going to go relieve myself, and this is a time for war. So I'm going to sleep. So I'm going to prove in this scenario, Bathsheba is married to a man that is honorable, but he's also committed more in this scenario to serving the kingdom than he is giving due benevolence to his wife.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother conversation of now you have possibly an unfulfilled woman up there on the rooftop bathing. So when she's summoned, it's not that she wants to be out of the will. She just wants, it's almost like Joseph in the Bible with Potiphar's wife. People talk about her being this woman that was starved for attention, but she was married to Potiphar. And during that time in Egypt culture, a lot of those guys in those positions were also eunuchs. Even though he was powerful, Potiphar now I'm talking about, probably did not have the ability to please her. So she was married and starved for sexual activity. Yes, Joseph was attractive. So we gotta make sure we insert these variables in, because I don't believe that everybody that's cheating is people that are just doing whatever they want to do. There are some fulfillment issues.
Yes.
And if you don't address them all, you'll never be able to help the scenario, because we do want to help people.
And I think
so I want to insert those two things.
Yeah, and I think the idea, and you're like Dunn was talking about, as far as the women, and I think it goes both ways. I think there's a post that came up too, that men have the responsibility as well, and that's why he's bringing in the idea of Uriah. He had the opportunity to go please his wife, and he chose not to.
Right.
And his reasoning for not to was because I don't want to go and do something that my other folks can't do. But the king, the general, the president, as Dunn said yesterday, has relieved you of that responsibility. So now you have no excuse but to go please your wife. But you have made the decision to put work over wife.
Woo,
that's a problem.
Gary.
Put Dunn's Cash App up here is what he's got to say.
What is it?
I'm just listen. All proceeds go to
Tara Dunn.
No, listen. Tara, if you watching, you have enough money. Gave you some allowance before you went to work this morning. Come on, church. You better find that rooftop tonight too. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think what happens is, I think sometimes is, service cannot supersede our due benevolence to our eyes. Absolutely, no question about it. And I think we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about, and the other thing is, so David committed adultery. All right, he did it. Now what? So it's one of those things now. Is I think sometimes a victim, and I mean this in either terms, right? Either the man or the woman that's a victim of adultery focus so much on being the victim, right? And not able to be able to step back and say, is there anything that I could have done or I did to contribute to that? And I think it's a challenge for some people to not focus on the wrong that was done to them and not realize the contribution that they did to that wrong that was done to them, which
Yeah,
goes back to
that's good.
the neglect, or that goes back to the lack of that maybe we are not providing to the person that we're supposed to be providing to, that we made the
Yeah,
commitment to provide that need to.
yeah, yeah.
And then not only did you make the commitment, you daring them to say, and you better not go to nobody else.
Wow.
Ooh. So you cut supply off, and then you say you can't go get supply from someone else.
And
Exactly.
then you tell us, when I say us, male or female, then you tell your spouse that God, you add, God now is honoring the honorable thing. So honor means I have to stay in an unfulfilled scenario. I'm not getting due benevolence,
That's
not getting
tricky.
needs met. I don't want to have a conversation. I mean, you don't want to have a conversation about it. Don't
We
want
don't want
to
to have
counseling about it.
exactly.
So the third option is now off the table because I'm going to feel horrible if I leave over this. So
Right.
now we have a whole lot. I'm going to say it. This is JD talking. This is Pastor Dunn talking. This is an evangelist talking. This is the truth. We have a lot of unfulfilled, very frustrated sexually saints of the Most High in our churches that come in and they are looking for that compliment. They're looking for that ego stroke to try to find the safest way to be an infidel.
Listen, and that's where
Yeah.
that's why you got a lot of people eating.
Man, you better talk. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. You know, I said the scenario last night. I thought the story about that very thing at Jay Moody is the eating thing, and I put the analogy up about the eating, right? And the idea is when we're in a committed relationship, or when we are when we decided that, whether that's marriage or just commitment in general, right? And we're saying, okay, I am supposed to supply this need for you. And let's use food as an example. So the commitment becomes that I am the one that's going to make sure you eat. And nobody else has that responsibility but me. So now the expectation becomes you are going to make sure I eat, whether that be you cook, I cook, we go out to eat, we order in, but you have that responsibility. And you've committed that to me. So now when I come home from work, I'm expecting to eat. But if I come home to work and constantly, or I'm coming home and ain't no food, then what I'm going to do eventually is, and the struggle becomes, now my temptation becomes to the point where I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna get me a small fry. But I'm only gonna get me a small fry because I still want to have enough appetite left just in case today you decide to feed me.
I think that's what Terrell Travis is calling the workplace spouse. That's the
Yeah,
fry.
yeah, that's the fry. And then now, so I get rid of the wrapper because I don't want you to know. But then as that becomes more routine, that small fry becomes a happy meal. That happy meal becomes a number one.
Yeah.
And then now the number one is routine, and I'm bringing the Chick-fil-A bag in the house and putting it in the trash can. I'm not even hiding no more because I'm
Yeah.
so frustrated and I'm so angry that now it's like I don't even care. And
Yeah.
even sometimes, to be honest, I've talked to couples where they do stuff because they want their spouse or the other one to find out.
Yep. Yep.
And that's what, to get a response or get some type of, like, to see, like, are you really like into me? Do you want to be with me? What,
Yes.
like, all right, if trying to get you to talk about it won't do it, then I'm gonna just go and blatantly do this and see what.
Reaction or response I'm gonna get out of you? How are you gonna
And it's
react to
about
this?
freedom. It's about having that space where you like, it's almost like somebody dealing with something in the closet and they finally have that moment of, listen, I want to be free. I don't want to keep hiding this, because if we're talking about Charles, Maslow, his hierarchy, pyramid we had in psychology, and you have all these basic needs. I think it's like 5 stages, and then that top stage, it's like, it's important for you to understand that a human, whether he's a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, a Buddhist, an atheist, humanistically, we have needs that if they don't get met by the person that we've committed ourselves to, that had their responsibility, after a while, we're going to start craving outside of the realm of what is called integrity.
It's natural.
It's natural. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
I heard somebody say, let me
really,
say this right quick, Dunn, because I want to address this. Somebody said, why not buy dinner, be the solution? And that sounds great. But if I buy dinner, then that means I'm providing for myself. I don't need you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's when you get into other scenarios that like you said, for whoever put that as far as buy your own dinner, within Gary's scenario, that means you're now getting it by yourself.
Right.
Whether that is some type of porn scenario, whether it is some type of personal pleasure, whether it is a Bathsheba moment. Because if you are the responsible party, and again, we're talking about within a covenant relationship.
We're covered in a committed covenant relationship. Yes.
Yeah. But again, I do want to make sure that we flip to the other side for a minute, Jay, to make sure that it's understood that David being the man, Bathsheba being the wife in this scenario. Every man ain't David. Some men are Bathsheba, and some women are David. So we got to make sure that we understand that in this, I don't want this conversation to come off as women, y'all got to make sure y'all putting out so that these men won't cheat. Men, it flips as well. We have a whole lot of dynamics. As a pastor, I've counseled a whole lot of situations where it ain't the man, it's the woman. It ain't the woman, it's the man. So let's make sure we make this conversation both sided, which that's what we're trying to do. But I want to just make sure that those that are tuning in, that they know that we understand both scenarios.
A ministry couple, let me read this right quick. A ministry couple once said that the affair was good for their marriage because it exploded years of issues and neglect on both sides and an opportunity to reset their marriage. They are now happier than ever. And then now, and of course, listen, of course, we're not saying go cheat and maybe that'll help your marriage. But I think sometimes what happens is things don't come to a head until something like this happens, which is probably what that example was alluding to. And it forces the conversation that we probably should have had years ago that we did not have, or we did not feel comfortable, or we wasn't honest enough to have. And now this happens. Now we got to have it.
Yeah.
And now it exposes a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. So, Kevin Motley, we just want to make sure that we understood your comment right about buy dinner and be solution. That you weren't talking about, or you were, which side were you talking about? Were you talking about be the solution to bring things together at home, or were you talking about be the solution to your own fulfillment? Like which part of your statement of buy your own dinner, if you're still logged on, I know you just made this comment, but if you're still logged on, if you can just clarify
a little bit,
the statement of why not buy dinner, be the solution. I know you came back with tit for tat is whack. We believe that. When you lead strong, they follow. Okay, cool. But yeah, Kev Motley, if you're still on, okay, to bring things together. He meant buy dinner, be strong, lead your family, and bring things together. Thank you for that clarification. And to, Gary's point of fulfillment, his example on fulfillment definitely was still on par. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, man. So guys, man, I mean, like, real talk, with everything that has happened in the pandemic, and we heard of all of the home issues that's been happening, man, where do we go from here, in terms of our, relationships and resolving and bringing fulfillment to our homes, right? Sensually, sexually, socially, spiritually, under the things, that they cover, like touching on it, like Travell Travis mentioned, for, I know men sometimes are considered the dominant ones in the sex, but women are more emotional. So maybe the fulfillment on, it could be either side. It's 2021, man. Roles are different these days, right? So
Roles are different, man.
that whole fulfillment thing can be either side, sexually or emotionally or mentally or socially. You know what I'm saying? So, how do we come to resolve with that, man, and make that personal? Hold on. Commit to the commitment.
Yeah, I mean, and like like the point you're making, right, is and I think Don wanted to make sure that we talked about this. There's two sides to this that we're talking about, and I don't think enough times we talk about the sexual desires that women have as well, and our responsibility to make sure that they're fulfilled. And I think, and I think that conversation sometimes is not probably not had as honestly because the stigma that's attached to it. If a woman expresses their strong sexual desire, then they're looked at differently than what a man it is, and that shouldn't happen. And I think, but the honesty, I think, to Jay's point is start with the honesty. I think the reset that the bishop talked about is, don't wait for the infidelity to reset. Figure out how do we do that now? What are some things that, be willing to have those difficult conversations that, you know your relationship, what challenges you're facing, and look, the elephant in the room is big. Address it. Talk about it. Be honest about it, and don't allow your frustration or your emotions to overstep the ability to be able to discuss the things that is impacting your relationship. And that's what kind of the book is really talking about is how to effectively, honestly communicate about very, very important things: finances, family, intimacy, and roles and responsibilities. And all four of those things somehow are going to, you know, be somehow impactful to the success of your relationship. But if you don't talk about them, and this pandemic has allowed us some time to really be able to face some of those things. And I think relationships are ending because some of these things came to a head, but we didn't have it wasn't equipped enough to really address them and talk about them honestly. So instead of talking about them, we just said forget it and we go our separate ways. Not knowing that the next relationship you get in, great chance you're gonna have the same issues because you never dealt with it.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that the pandemic also allowed us to I guess, go back and do some introspection so that we can appreciate not only what we've become, but appreciate our experiences. We got to learn how to appreciate our experiences, like years. The Bible talks about he'll restore the years. And the reality is, when you are in a position like we were a year and a half ago, where you had time to go have a conversation and reset and recall
Hmm.
some years, there's some things that you can do that can recall some things. You mentioned it, Gary. I mean, you gained weight from eating emotionally. Why don't you go ahead and lose weight so that when you are on the rooftop taking a bath, it's attractive? Come on, church.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, Other things, the years. I heard, and I'm calling him prophet or pastor because anytime I'm in a setting like this, whoever I quote, I call him prophet or pastor. He's not a pastor; he's a comedian. His name is Earthquake. So Prophet Earthquake said, I gave all my good years to the hoes. So now that I'm married, I'm like, I gave all my good years out. So you have to recall your good years back that you wasted and or gave when you were in another season. So I think all of the stuff that you did then, you have to recall some of the years. And I believe that to get fire back in relationships, as we talked about, Gary, before, how to get the fire back in your relationship, it's not always let's go have sex. The fire is let's go have a conversation to relight the fire on why I was even attracted to you from the beginning. Or, as one guy said, I was attracted to my wife and I married her because she's my high school sweetheart. Then I got attracted to her because she was my best friend. Then I got attracted to her because she became a mother of my children. Then it's like there's levels to this and there's stages. So find out how attracted you can be to your post-pandemic sweetheart. Find other moments, but moreover, what I'm saying is you have to now get your years back. You have
Get
to
a blue pill.
oh God Almighty, Dr. Molly, get a blue pill. Hey, and you know what? For some, that might be the scenario.
That might be the scenario, right? And you got, and
mean,
again, it goes back to being able to talk about the necessity of the blue pill, and to be able to go to the and really just say, hey, what do we need to do here, right? And if do we need to go see somebody and to get that boost or that help? Because again, those are things that come into play that sometimes are outside of what we can control. But
Yeah,
but we got to be honest enough and humble enough to be able to address those things and not ignore them, because ignore them is how we end up on the rooftop, and not
yeah,
talking about them is how we don't pay attention to the pathway to the rooftop. It's the
right?
pathway to the rooftop that we got to really look at and talk about, and how do we get there, and what are some of the things we can minimize or prevent so that we don't get there.
Hey Jay, can I pose this to you?
sure.
We did say in this text, according to 2 Samuel 11, the entire chapter, we hear no conversation with God. We see no devil was present, the enemy, Satan, and we also see no prayer, no worship, no praise, nothing. It's not until the next chapter we see the prophet Nathan comes in, and now it gets spiritual. But this
Hmm.
whole discourse and narrative, there's not really any God and David moments. So my question to you is, how, as a pastor, how I want to use the word appropriate, how do you now add God into the scenario when people are having issues, rooftop issues, infidelity? Because we go to counseling, we talk about it, but how do you feel it's important to import the spiritual aspect to this?
Well, I think the book of Ecclesiastes says, two is better than one, and a three-strand cord cannot easily be broken.
Mm-hmm.
That is God. God becomes the glue, right? But the spirituality is in the practicality. The spirituality is in how you handle the moment, or how you're handling the situation, right? Whether you're going back to scriptures that talk about how husbands should deal with their wives and wives should deal with their husbands, however it is, when you take the proper steps to resolve, right? I believe that that's spiritual. I believe that that's the moment that God comes into the situation, because what happens when Nathan shows up? Nathan's the prophet of God. He's the mouth of God, the voice of God. He brings David to his reality moment of the situation.
Hmm.
And so when Gary's talking about having the conversations, those are godly moments.
Wow,
Whether we want to, see it that way, that's what it is, right? He says,
that's
"Come,
good.
let us reason together."
Yeah.
That's not
Yo,
just
Jay, that's
church
good.
business meetings.
That's
Yeah.
good. Like Jay, if you can mind, I mean, if you don't mind, I want you to finish that. But I want to, y'all. First of all, those are watching. That's really good. That's the first time I've really heard somebody nail that point and say that we're waiting on a God moment to be at church, fivefold intervention. When the reality is, the conversation is the God moment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jay. That's good.
Yeah. So I just think that's it. And if we say we trust God, name me one person in scripture that trusted God that didn't have to go through a valley experience.
Right.
that didn't have to come to a Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane moment. Like, and for many of us, how we handle those moments determines how we come out of that situation. If we don't handle them well, that seed of bitterness is going to set in, and you're going to stay in that marriage and you're going to be unfulfilled. But if you handle it well, it becomes the difficulty turns into the opportunity of development and growth that changes the trajectory of the relationship. Again,
Yeah.
moving past those stages where arguments now are conversations,
Yeah.
and it's like them joints literally last at the last exclamation point or period. Like
Hmm.
beyond that, we're starting a new paragraph, starting a new sentence, starting a new day. All right, that's that. Let's go.
Right.
I mean, you ever hear like older people, right, when they're talking to younger couples and younger couples are explaining their problems and they da da da, neck and all, and they go, "Oh, that's it? That's all you." And you looking at them like, "What you mean?" It's because they've gotten past a lot of those moments that we major in. Like they're
Yeah.
like really, when you look at the grand scheme of things, you know, you'll find that this is a part of the course of the relationship. And we've chosen, after a period of time of going back and forth, we've chosen that when, whatever the final decision was of how they will move forward in a relationship, that either helped their relationship to thrive and grow, and they're 50 years in their relationships and they're still happy. They're still acting like it's 50 days in their relationship.
Right. Yeah, and it's the conversation piece, like you were saying, and I like that what you said. It's the God moment to be able to be honest enough, and when you see things, when you recognize things, take the time, but first, figure out who you are,
Yeah,
and be able to understand and recognize your struggle and what you may be battling mentally and emotionally, even physically, and deal with those things. And then if you're in a relationship, you should be able to communicate those things with the person you're in a relationship. Hey, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm struggling with. This is my
yeah,
challenge right now. This is something that I'm dealing with. I may not be as intimate with you right now because I'm focusing on getting this promotion. So give me some time to be able to deal with it. I'm not neglecting you, but I'm focusing on this so that we can
that's good.
have a better life. So, and whatever that is, right? But you got to be able to be honest enough to bring it to the table. But if you don't know you first, you
Hmm.
certainly cannot, you know, be able to communicate what you want or what you desire to somebody else. They can't read your mind, um,
Yeah,
and you got to be able to be open, and that goes both ways. Being able to do that, and as I said last night, a success in the relationship is not how that person makes you feel. It's about how you feel about yourself when you're in that with that person.
hmm,
It's good.
And if you feel good about yourself when you're with that person, then you have it doesn't hurt you to be able to bring those things to your attention because that person, you're with them, you feel good about you because
yeah,
you should always be first.
yeah,
But if we focus on trying to make that person happy, right? Or you're focusing on, I want to feel good about them. You're not feel good about yourself first. Do you feel good about you when you're with them? That should be your question.
Right.
yo, that's good, G. Listen, we're gonna address one more question and then we're gonna wrap up. But yo, we may get a part two. I think
Yeah.
yeah, I think we definitely may need to come back soon, probably within the next couple of weeks, and
Yeah.
and finish this and talk about it a little more. But someone said this, man, and I think this happens. I think this happens, especially um, you know, depending on the age that you get married, right? You're always, you should always be evolving, always should be growing. But what happens, man? Someone says sometimes it's hard when you lose yourself in the middle of the relationship.
Ooh,
That's deep. That's
Wow.
deep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And
somebody else
that,
says something similar. Sometimes we as women get caught up in pleasing our husband. We often lose ourselves. Wow.
and vice versa.
Woo! And vice
And
versa.
vice
Yeah.
Wow.
versa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah. This
I
is
mean,
good.
it really is, and I think it goes back to the pushing the pause button, and really working on yourself, and
Yeah.
recognizing that you are the most important, because if you ain't healthy, you are no good to nobody else.
Talk. Talk.
So you got to start to recognize who you are, and not try to be right. We meet people and we put on what I call the representative, and that's the person that we think that other person wants you to be. But we can't be that for so long because that's hard to do.
Getting lost in the character.
You get lost in the character, right? Denzel couldn't be the training day guy forever because he wouldn't last like that. That's not who he is. He had to just be that person for a certain amount of time to play that character. But you're right, you get lost in the character, and then
Oh,
now what?
this is
So
this is
that's the
heavy.
challenge for that.
This is heavy. This is heavy. There's more than one way to lose yourself. You can become parents and forget about being a spouse and lose
Oh,
yourself. Ooh.
That
Woo.
is
whole nother thing.
Oh
that's a
Whole
gosh.
nother
whole
thing.
nother
What is
another.
going on this afternoon?
That's
Yeah,
a whole nother another.
Lunch
whole nother thing.
conversations is getting interesting. The
Yeah,
Yeah.
facts
man.
of our different faces, man. But I think these are real things. And listen, um, I definitely want.
Whew.
I definitely talk about believers being happy, man. Like you listen, we say we want to draw people to the kingdom of God, but everybody that they know is unhappy.
Buddy.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
unhappy. And many people blame the church for their personal insecurities, personal flaws, personal indiscretions,
Mm-hmm.
personal,
Hmm.
right? And maybe some things just wasn't handled well. But I know, like, when it comes to stuff like this, when it comes to marriage, this is not something that can be preached across the pulpit. No,
No.
sir.
Right.
No, sir. You just, especially if, listen, this is not a hooping conversation. This is a
Right. Yeah.
let me sit down and take my time with this. And in the words of Paul, I don't mind repeating myself
That's
so
it.
that you will get the message.
Mm.
I need to say this over and over and over and over and over again so that you can get it down in your soul. Because it's unfortunate that statistically they say that more marriages fail in the body of Christ than outside the body of Christ. Um, the statistics within the church that more marriages fail within the church, and I don't know all the reasons, but I definitely believe that some is that we don't tell the truth
Right.
about the situation and how to handle a situation.
That's it.
No, I ain't telling you. I may not tell you to leave your spouse, but if your life is in danger, I need you to use sense, right?
Yeah.
I shouldn't
Yeah.
have to, come across the pulpit again. God moments. Oh, I shouldn't have to come across the pulpit and
Right.
say that, like, your life is in danger. Get up,
Yeah. Don't
get up.
hide behind your Christianity. Don't hide behind,
Yeah,
your belief system. And I think sometimes that's what happens a lot of times is we hide behind that, and then we use that sometimes as a blanket, when the reality is we have to uncover that sometimes and really deal with this the personal part of it, like you said, Jay Moody, to be able to really get into that. And hiding is not going to help you.
yeah, for
Right.
sure, for sure. So, Jay, okay, babe, I see you dropping jewels. She said, "Common sense is not always common courtesy."
Wow.
Come on here,
Yes, sis.
Yeah, buddy.
Yes, sis.
come on here.
That's it
Let's
right
work
there.
on it.
Yeah, buddy.
That's it.
Ooh, sometimes we expect pastor to fix things that God has given us the power to fix on our. Ooh, Cass.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yo, okay. This is some this afternoon lunch conversation has been interesting, man. So as we close, Jay. Man, we talked about a bunch of things, man. What would you like the people to remember today? Oh, guys, let me say, oh, real quick, before he closed, right? So, we've been kind of cool. We've been kind of casual since the last time we talked. Jonathan has added someone to his life. Yanamasi Kodabashitebokusa. And her name is Tara.
Come on now.
Tara Dunn. Jonathan Dunn is married, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes,
And
sir.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
it's and for those that are watching, I have been single since 2003. And I had to go through my own personal mountains and valleys, challenges, experiences, good and bad, ups, downs, to get to this place
Yeah.
where I said, you know what? When I knew that I wanted to go ahead and lock it down with her, who at the time was my friend, I had to deal with me. And I took the time, and I'm still practicing the time that when I took the time to work on me, the things that I had to deal with, I'm still putting it to practice. But I
Yes.
knew that I had to deal with me first before I got into a relationship with her, because I could not continue to keep dealing with, I got to find somebody that's good for me, when I really didn't address, I got to find somebody that I'm good for. Well, the reality is, we look, especially those of us that are kings, that are in a position, people always tell us, find somebody that's good for you, which is true. But if you don't do the work to make sure you're good for what's good for you, you can mess up a good thing. So I am glad to say that I was able to do some work, and it's been a challenge for me to come from married before to single, do the ministry thing and the industry thing and all of that stuff, and then now get to the place where I'm saying I do, when I actually was one of those that was like, I'm kind of cool on that whole getting married thing. I don't mind covenant, but I don't like contracts. Don't like them. I don't. But I had to get to a place where I knew this is what I wanted. So we're two imperfect people, but I wanted to make a decision to get myself together. So yes, I am a married man, and I am grateful to God. She's much older than me. I'll be 50. She's a cougar. I'm just playing. I'm older than her. No, I'm just playing. She's younger than me. She's actually 2 years younger than me. So I'll be 50 this year. And I thank God that I've been able to experience life and find love before the rapture. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Jonathan, I want to publicly say congratulations, man. And Tara, I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait for Shaquille and I to sit down with you guys and laugh. And I need to know all of the funny stuff that this guy is doing. I mean, I can only imagine.
That's why you
Just
got to put now we got to put her cash up so we can get a flight to come to Jersey.
listen, we gonna make that happen.
Because
This
you know
summer.
I got her laughing. And both
We
y'all, Gary and Jay, y'all
yeah.
both have been brothers while I've been going through this process of single evangelist, single artist, single pastor, and having a lot of rooftop moments. Come on, church, where I've seen a lot of Bathshebas bathing, like for real, but I had to have integrity. Shando. I had to go get me
And
some
we
wings from BBQs, and I had to go get some Rippos and some pop and eat it. I had to eat. That's why I got this little weight on me. But I thank God for my
he is my rooftop in a weary land. Listen, bro, I just want to say, man, real talk, man. Congratulations, dude. Like it's
Thank you.
it's it's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Gary, congratulations on the book, bro.
Yeah, yo.
Appreciate you, man.
Listen, everybody that's listened, tag, share, comment. And then I want you to order a book. I put the website up.
Yeah.
Go to GaryBrentSwanson.com and it'll have information about the book, Relationship Square. a couples conversation, man. I mean, Gary, just real quick summary, and then something that you want to leave with the people today.
And leave
Yeah,
your handle up
just
there, Gary. Leave your
yeah.
Instagram and Facebook handle.
Okay, yeah.
Gary,
Instagram and Facebook handle is Gary Brent Swanson for both of them. Gary Brent Swanson is just like the website, GaryBrentSwanson.com. The book is The Relationship Perfect Square, a couples conversation. And it's really just talking about how to have those difficult conversations that we've been talking about today in 4 areas: roles and responsibilities, finances, family, and then intimacy. And in the intimacy, I do address infidelity. So, the book is just really kind of just giving you the tools to be able to have those difficult conversations and the importance of that to be able to deal with in those 4 areas. So, yeah, go out to the website, grab the book. I think you will be blessed by it.
yo, that's good stuff. That's good stuff,
And
man.
it's great for your church. We've been selling it at our church at FAI. We've had him come in and sit with the people and really talk about it. And we've been selling the book. We've been teaching from the book. It's a great book for read, but it's also a great book for principles for you to actually impute this into your. So it's great for your church if you want to take your church and your relationships, impact relationships through this book. It's great.
Oh, that's cool, man. We have our family month coming up, and definitely we want to be able to share some principles and things, man, with the couples that will help strengthen the family. Because we believe that when the family is strong, the church can be strong and the community can be strong.
Yes,
Yeah.
So,
sir.
G, we'll definitely be reaching out and have you come in, man, and
Would love to. Would
talk
love
to
to
us
for
and talk
sure.
to us about the book. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go ahead and order it. I'm gonna dig in, and so that way we can make the conversation really juicy for our couples and our families that will be joining us on the call. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining in today. Man, I've really enjoyed this conversation with Pastor Jonathan Dunn and my brother Gary Brent Swanson. Great guys. I've known them for at least 15 plus years at this juncture, and it's just been an amazing relationship over the years. We see the growth, the evolution of each other, and it's been a blessing. Get you some friends that you can grow with. And this is what we are talking about: safe spaces and safe places.
Yeah.
Have people that you can have those conversations with. I know that I've called Jonathan and had some conversations with me, and he had to share some things with me, kind of put Jason where Jason needed to be to position himself to, keep things going and, everything that God has, ordained for my life. So I thank God for you, bro, publicly.
Yeah.
And so, again, guard yourself. Make sure you have people in your life that's not going to go get Bathsheba for you. Make sure that they'll have the conversation to you as the what and the why. And again, there's no judgment there. There's
Yeah.
no judgment. That's really, really key, guys, because we all have a destiny that we're trying to get to, that God has for our life. So let's guard ourselves, man. Let's live. Let's live and let's enjoy life. If you're watching and you're married, go kiss, hug your spouse. Go out to eat today. Go for a walk in the park. Just rekindle or just keep the fire going. Whatever stage you're in, just keep it going. All right. So appreciate you guys. Love you guys. And we'll be coming back with more conversations. God bless.